Hi, in this episode, we're discussing the impact of AI on consumer insights, and we're joined by Cristian Enriquez. Hi, Cristian. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Dean. How are you? Hi, George. How's it going?
Yeah, we're
It's
good.
great.
Thanks. Well, I'm good.
Thanks for joining.
Speak for myself.
Yeah,
I'm
you
good.
can speak for
Yeah.
me. No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
We're both good. Cristian. Before we get started, could you just give everybody a little bit of an introduction into you and your role, and then we'll come on to the AI stuff in a bit. But if you could just sort of set the scene as to what you do.
Absolutely. So, as you introduced me, I'm Cristian Enriquez, head of sales at TEDx was my last role. I've been in the consumer insight space for about 13 years, always helping clients navigate the digital transformation journey in respect with consumers and customers, right? For B2C and B2B. I've been in the States for about 14 years, originally from Chile, and I reside in New York right now, in Long Island, New York.
Cool. Exciting. We get a lot of people from New York, or we had a few people from New York, haven't we, George?
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, it connects to the Remesh roots, I think, which speaks actually to what Cristian is, you're speaking about is basically they were doing consumer insights, employee insights, using basically a research platform that was powered by AI. So that's actually where Cristian and I met. And he's continued in that sphere.
Yeah, I've stayed in that industry as many of your other guests probably have said that AI has impacted and continue to do so on the day-to-day, but also on the strategic vision of a lot of companies in the future. So it's a lot of fun. You get to interact with great people, both on the client side and also on the people side, the participants and the people that provide their insights. So it's really cool. It's really cool. And it's really cool to be part of the information of how products and services are made or are evolved over time. So it's a really cool industry.
Yeah, that is cool. So in terms of, let's dive into the AI side of things. In terms of AI tools, are there any tools that you are particularly using yourself at the moment? So, obviously there's the big one that everyone talks about is maybe ChatGPT, but is there anything that or other tools that you're using at the moment?
Yeah, no, definitely. So as a sales leader, like if I take a step back out of my industry and I kind of focus in the sales leadership and the role, my goal is always to enable my team to be as efficient as they can, right? And for me, that is how can I make their job as effective and efficient and productive as possible. So companies like Gong for call recording, call analyzing, and transcription. Apollo, which is kind of a competitor to Outreach and SalesLoft for automation, email writing, prospect handling, are kind of like the top two. There were a couple of other chatbot companies that I saw. One was kind of like a lead intercept, where you would then be connected, depending on the lead scoring, you then be connected to, let's say you had 3 leads coming into your website, it would prioritize which lead you would go and get in front of based on their path on their website and things like that. So there's a couple of tools that we've used, but I would say that the biggest ones that I think that brought the biggest impact to the team were Gong and Apollo. That helped us a lot to be very efficient on our day-to-day tasks. And of course, the big ones that are implementing AI, like your HubSpot CRM, your Salesforce CRM, etc.
I'm curious about your experience with the Apollo platform and where you were actually using AI in there, because I've played around with that myself, and it seems like one of those tools. Just for context, I'm assuming the part you're talking about is where it sort of helps you write the email sequences. Of kind of like what you might say, and these are sort of the pain points. It's kind of cool. You sort of put some context in about pain points, who the customer might be, and it sort of generates some stuff. But
George, just is that the tool? I think you tipped me off on that tool months ago. Was that the tool?
Yes.
That you were running campaigns?
Yeah, because it also has a really great people search. They've kind of skirted around the LinkedIn Premium effectively to be able to kind of search people. But its sequencing tool is so, I mean, we've all gotten these emails, right? Like you get an email, 3 days later, you get another one. Then 2 days after that, you get another one. And that one is normally like the breakup email. And, it's this kind of format that comes from the template that they offer. But I'm curious, how have those actual kind of scripts that it writes, like how far can you actually take them before you really have to take over and use them? Because they seem a bit generic, or like they're kind of like, yeah, this is clearly written by an AI that's going to mass email everybody.
Right. So I think there's two things that at least I would always push the team and myself to do. One is it's making sure that you are providing the right input, so the right information. And I've seen people being quote unquote lazy on the information that is provided to these AI tools, right? Because they think that they're going to be magically understand anything and everything that you want, right? So I have it on my head. I'm going to write one sentence and they're going to do everything. So you got to be very, very, very conscious and diligent on the information that you're going to put in on these tools. What are the problems that you're solving? Who are the contexts that you're going to be targeting? What is your value proposition? And then what are the action items? What is the call to action, right? And I think that this tool will get you 80 to 90% there. Okay. So then you still
if you have all of that context.
You have to give all that context. You have to give everything, and you're still going to have to do 10% of the work. But it just allows you to create variations of these emails and these value propositions so you can test what works and what doesn't work, what resonates and what doesn't work. And that is the outbound and outreach, right? Is what is it that you are providing to your prospect that is making them click and say, yes, I want to have a meeting with you, or yes, I'm going to download that content, or yes. So I think that more so than the email itself, it also gives you the opportunity to do tests and A/B testing. And it allows you to do ABCD testing, right? And a combination of subject lines and a combination of the body of the email and a call to action. And it gives you that opportunity for you to learn and to iterate, because there's no one silver bullet email that you're going to be able to use for all of your prospects and all of your segments and get the meetings. And that's the reality. So,
and are you using this?
I think that's where the difference is.
Are you using this cold, or are you using it with like your funnel that you've already maybe got the details?
Yeah, so both. So we would use it for both. So on the new business, right, we would make sure that we would have a sequence or a campaign, whatever these tools call it, to get those prospects to interact with us, right? And you can have multiple channels. You can do emails, you can do calls, you can do social. So you can add steps to do all that. And this tool will help you kind of navigate the process. And then you can be very cold based on the criteria of your target persona or ideal client persona, your ICP. And then on the other hand, you can actually create sequences and or steps for you to go and connect and expand with already accounts that you have on your book of business. So to give you an example, one of the accounts that I used to work was Anheuser-Busch, Unilever. So massive opportunities, a lot of people to connect with. So for me, instead of having to send one email off and say, hey, I work with so-and-so, and this is what we did, I was able to tell this tool, these are the 3 or 4 problems that I've helped with, help me come up with 2 or 3 variations of the messaging. Because I had 3 teams that I was selling into: innovation, insights, and strategy. So depending on the persona, the people within those companies that I wanted to tackle, I could create the messaging and I could create the different steps that I wanted. And the tools they go a little further into, like I believe Apollo was also coming out with like a lead scoring tool that you can integrate with HubSpot. So then you can again prioritize and make sure that you understand where these leads are, whether these leads are worth pursuing or they're just like something that we should send to marketing for them to nurture before bringing into the sales team.
That's interesting.
Wow. That's
I mean,
incredibly powerful.
Yeah. The thing that fascinates me, though, is the amount of sort of human manual thinking that has to go into the beginning of all that, right? Like the actual context that you build up of all the different things you've done for previous clients or previous people within the account, like all the different ways you're going to do, like all of that sounds like a very manual process to then get this to accelerate something that which would also then take weeks, days, we'll say. Otherwise, which is, fascinating the balance between how much of it is like the change in the human work to get the context built up for this thing to quickly do something.
Yeah. But I think, if you think about it, like, a good sales team and a good, business development team, should really probably be doing this stuff anyway. Sure. Coming up with the context, really understanding things, really, if anything, this sort of almost enforces good practice. So you are building up that context and really getting to grips with, your pipeline, your customers, the lead nurturing process. It's almost like you have to, a good sales team would do that anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Dean, you make a really good point, because this is one of the risks that we have, especially on the sales side, is that a lot of the information processing, the call analysis that Gong can do, and all of those things kind of like takes the seller out a little bit of, I really need to understand this because I really need to put my call notes and I really need to be able to understand what my clients are telling me, pain points, challenges, what do they need, etc., and think about how we can solve for it. So it can be a risk where you have all of these manual tasks and or motions that a salesperson needs to do, and it can create a gap of knowledge, not only on your customers, but how you're solving for their problems. And that is something that at least I try to be as conscious as possible and try to push the teams or the people, even myself, to make sure that there is a step in which I need to really understand. So, for example, what we would do, and this is something that I learned from one of our leaders at Remesh, was this: hey, what are the challenges and problems, and how we're going to solve them? Slide once you're getting into your conversation with prospects, right? Once you've done your discovery, but that needs to be done manually, right? You can automate it, but you want to make it manual, because then, at least myself, I'm very much of when I was at class or when I was at school, for me to learn was I need to hear this and I need to write it down. So I need to learn it, and then I need to reread it, right? Exactly. So that is my only kind of, not only, but that's one of my concerns about like all of this automation and being able to go from Gong into your CRM at HubSpot to then to your Apollo outreach. If all of that is manually, then me as a salesperson, I don't have to learn anything. I don't have to think of anything, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things that I really try to be as purposeful as possible in terms of, I need to make sure that I'm proactive and learning the needs and wants of my clients.
Yeah, I mean, I've done it myself when I was in sales. I'd had good sales meetings. That inevitably, the good sales meetings are the ones that I did the prep for, right? And I really learned about the customer. And then the customers that I didn't take as, I didn't put as much time into, you'd come out of the sales meeting thinking, well, why, that was a waste of time, because I didn't give them the respect. I didn't put that time into learning. And so we couldn't have those sophisticated conversations, which were really focused on their pain points. And if, like you say, if everything's happening automatically in the background, that there may be a tendency for certain salespeople, which is how I got in the end, which was to be quite lazy and just go, what, it's all done for me. I'll just take some notes and I'll be fine. But actually, you need to be diligent.
I saw one of your guys' episodes, and Dean, you were mentioning about how you did not like to update CRM.
Yes.
And it's a challenge. Look, as a sales leader, you have to push your team members to do that and all that. So if you can automate a lot of the non-impactful things, right? I'm all for it. I'm all for this. I'm all for like using Gen AI to help you become better. For example, for me, that I'm bilingual, but Spanish is my first language, and English, although I think I'm getting better and better every day, it's not my main language. I love these tools because it helps me put my thoughts in a non-great way with the English that I have to then say, make this better. Like, make this like act as a professional writer that you're writing an email to a prospect XYZ using all of this information. And
that's interesting.
Yeah, the amount of posts that on LinkedIn or emails that I have had, either the Apollo tool or ChatGPT, Gemini, or any of those that has helped me, it's amazing. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Have you used the tool in like for ChatGPT or Gemini, like one of the generic chatbot ones? Mm-hmm. Have you used it in that way, but you're writing out what you want to say in Spanish and then have it write it in English? I'd be curious how accurate that ends up being, you know, to be like, this is the language that I think I can articulate this in more detail or with more nuance and see how it translates it at all, you know?
Yeah. What I can tell you though, George, is that like working on the insights world, right? You have questionnaires, you have surveys, you have discussion guides, right? You have a lot of these things, and a lot of these engagements are global. So you have to go through it. And for efficiency's sake and whatnot, sometimes I would take those that were in English that needed to be done in Mexico, Argentina, Chile, etc., and we would put them through either like Google Translate back in the day. And in my last companies like Remesh or SiteX, they would have auto translate connected to Google via APIs, and they have gotten so much better. Like in the 13 years that I've been in the industry, it is amazing how much better they have become in terms of being able to understand and translating. For example, at SiteX, we had a translation immediately. Like you would write your survey in English, and then you would say translate into Spanish. And I would review it. And if I had to correct 5% or 10%, if it wasn't super technical, right? If there were technical surveys, then you would have to go in and do more manual work. But if it wasn't a technical, it was a consumer survey, 5% I had to change, 10% maybe of the entire questionnaire, which is huge. It's huge, not only on time, but it costs you money to translate things. Like there's translation companies. They exist for a reason. My mom was an English Spanish translator.
Yeah, they used to be.
Well, they used to be. Right.
Yeah.
My mom used to do executive translations in Chile because she was an English teacher, and it would be back in the day. I would see her with the dictionary. So imagine like the change that now you can just put it on a software that you're using to create a survey, and everything's done.
Right.
Automatically.
I mean, I think that's a good segue to getting into some of the actual positive and negative impacts that you've seen. I think there's the day-to-day stuff, sure, but I think you also have a unique insight to this whole consumer engagement in consumer insights industry. And just even from where we were at Remesh, which was using kind of an offering like a new paradigm of research. It's not a focus group. It's not really a survey. It's this sort of in between enabled by AI. Like what have the impacts that you've seen on the industry, on your role kind of been over the past few years?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, George. And yeah, so Remesh, I think it was very unique because it was kind of combining two very traditional methodologies into one, powered by AI. Right. And they were very early on in the space of using AI to solve for problems. Right. For the problems that we're solving was speed, scale, and cost. Right. But for example, if I move into SiteX, which was a very quant traditional platform. So for those that are not familiar with the consumer insights or the research methodologies, it is all about the numbers, the statistical models, and different methodologies that are used to answer business questions. All quant-based or all server-based, self-declarative for the most part. And I think that the biggest change and I think the biggest opportunity, it's the ability to prompt this generative AI or tools that are in the industry with Gen AI power to solve for the business question at hand. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that if I'm an entrepreneur, if I want to start a new, hard seltzer product, right? I have no idea what a max diff or a conjoint means for me to understand what attributes should I put forth. I have no idea, but I do know that I have a problem that is, how do I best position my product? right? Yeah. So what SiteX did really well, and the others are following, was bringing in generative AI into the process and the platform to say, hey, I am a marketer, or I'm a product, or I'm a founder. These are the problems, or this is what I'm trying to achieve. What is the recommended methodology for this? Right? Gotcha. And then it would tell you, hey, you should be running a max diff or a conjoint analysis in order for you to answer that business question. And then it would prompt you, do you want me to get something started? And you could simply say, yes, and these are the 5 questions that I would like for you to ask on this topic. And it would generate an entire survey for you.
That's so wild.
A process. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the question is like, do you think that the change there is really the user that they're going after? Because it sounds like this was a platform or a tool that would be used by like a survey professional, like someone who has been hired to actually do this, whether it's an agency or whatever, to that kind of level that any business owner can run their own survey. Was that sort of the goal in there, or is that sort of? It sounds like an effectively.
Right. So it's. So I actually had a conversation with a client on this, and we had a little discussion. But for me and for the company back then, it's all about like also like democratizing a little bit the access to this type of information and the access of these type of business decisions and methodologies for you to improve your business. So you don't need an expert with 20 years of experience. You can have somebody that understands how to do certain things and make some decisions. For example, we should have a package that it highlights the value proposition, or you know what, it's all about the visuals of the colors, right? So what is more important? Oh, you know what? Let's go ask people what is more important to them. So I know the problem. I know what I need to do. I just don't know what methodology is the best. So why don't I interact with a software where I know they can not only do and have those methodologies, but they can also help me create and craft the survey for me to get those answers. And then maybe in the next couple of minutes, we go into like the back end of the analysis, the output, which is also the big piece of the puzzle. But for you to have a problem, and this was something that when we were doing demos and we were showing this, people would go, oh my God, wow. Because imagine having the ability to say, what are you trying to figure it out now? So I'm trying to figure out what is my best packaging. Okay, let me ask. And you do a prompt. I am trying to figure out what is the best design for my product. What should I be asking, or what methodology should I be using? And it would just like tell you the 3 or 4 different methodologies that you could be using. Right there and then, instead of having to go and hire an Ipsos or an agency, spend $300,000 on a conjoint analysis that is going to tell you that you need to focus on these 4 attributes.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's crazy.
Talk about impact.
That seems like right. I mean, I think that's the positive and negative impact, right? It really depends on what side of the fence you're standing on there. Yeah.
Right, because the lady was saying like, hey, like research is a very technical and it's a very accurate science, and you need to know what you're doing and all that. And I completely agree. I don't disagree. But now there's so many tools available that do the math. Right.
And I think there's another piece of the math that comes in, which is would a business owner, or would any person, right? Like, let's say take someone who's writing a blog. They maintain a blog all the time. They don't have the money or the time to hire an artist to do, or an illustrator to do each of the images, right? Midjourney shows up. Now I can put in a prompt, and now that person can afford a subscription service to be able to do this. So it's not that they're saying that this artist never, or they're replacing them. There was no job for them originally there. It's not like that role was also there. So I imagine the same thing applies, right? Like,
but
maybe but that's a little bit.
Okay. So I think you've got, maybe that's one case, one extreme.
Sure. Yeah.
And then the other case at the other extreme is the agencies or the high paying businesses that will always use those artists and use those services. But the middle ground is where the battle is, right? So the middle ground is the bit where you have some sort of artists or whatever operating, and they're the ones who are going to get the threat from AI coming in and sort of stealing that territory. So that I think the extremes,
Yeah,
it empowers at the extremes, and at that extreme, no one cares because they're going to use their artists anyway. But in the middle,
But okay, if I bring it back a little bit to the consumer insights or people understanding the world, right? You're gonna have, as Dean mentioned, like these huge organizations, right? Procter and Gamble, Nestle, Kraft Heinz, that they have their process and they have their ways of doing a concept testing, or they have their ways of doing innovation, right? They have their frameworks. Now, you can always go in and help out, optimize some of those frameworks, because the frameworks that they've been using have been outdated, manual, expensive, etc. Right? And it's great if it works for them and they've been doing great. And I mean, they're the biggest brands in the world and they own everything, and it's working, right? But to George's point about those organizations that are coming up, or those mid-market organizations that need to be faster or more efficient or smarter with their budget to compete with these large organizations, that's, I think, where there's a lot of opportunities. And to George's example, I mean, if you're doing, for example, the process of I'm trying to do an innovation, right? Or I'm trying to do, you can go from A to maybe X or Y, not Z, but X or Y, by leveraging a technology or Gen AI to come up with the questions, right? You can use a platform to then analyze that information and extract the insights. Now, with those information that you already have, now you can grab that and put it into a mid-journey, or even if the tool or technology already has it, and you can say, hey, create a 3 PowerPoint slide or 4 PowerPoint slides, because I have a leadership presentation, and I want you to come up with 3 social media posts because I want to test an hypothesis. So you have an entire cycle of development done in a matter of a week, 2 weeks, with testing at the end of the insights that came out in market. So if you have an advertising that you want to do, or a concept that you want to test out, then you go out in the market and put it on social media, or put it on your blog, or wherever you want to test it out, and then you get real-time feedback. So that is the impact that I'm talking about. That is the workflow that I'm saying, that it can really, really help out the decision-making journey in some of these companies. Now, of course, there's going to be barriers. People don't trust the data, or there's going to be quality problems here and there. Definitely. But now, then we started talking about like this synthetic data. I don't know if you guys are familiar about this, but like where there's people, right? We use people to answer surveys. Now, what if you could understand those segments and those group of people and say, why don't we do lookalikes? So you train a model to doing lookalikes. And now you have your segment, you have your group of people, you know how they behave, you know how they react, you know how they usually give you feedback on certain, let's say, imagery or concept that you're providing. And now you can reuse that synthetic group of people as well. So
that's fascinating.
There's a lot of things happening in the industry that you are wow.
I feel like there's a way in that world where we all end up dressing exactly the same. And it just becomes like a massive averaging platform or something that brings us all back to But that's fascinating, because there is roles that I could see, you know, especially in areas where access to the right number of people for a survey might not be available for other, you know, a bunch of different reasons, whether it's internet access or whatever, that you could just say, what would these people think if we're willing to go with the 72% accuracy or whatever it is?
Exactly.
But I could see a decision of like, is the bottle red or blue? You know, then that's okay, right? It's not a super nuanced decision. There could be space for that. That's fascinating.
Right.
And I think the thing as well with the any errors that might crop in from AI is that it's such a huge advantage on what came before. It allows you to do so much than what came before, that the errors are almost insignificant because of the improvements that the tool has given you.
Yeah, that's what it feels, at least.
It can, because your innovation or your learning process is much faster. So what it would take you 4 months to do or 6 months to do, now you're able to do it in a month, 3 weeks. So you can make a couple more mistakes, or you can be a less accurate because you will learn much faster. Now, again, this is not for all of the business decisions that companies do on the consumer insights and customer kind of like driven decisions, right? Because there are going to be big decisions, billions of dollar decisions, where you might not want to trust a synthetic group of synthetic data, right?
Sure,
or you might not want to trust, or you might not want to go, more than trust, you don't want to go with a self-generated survey. You want to make sure that you have an expert in the industry that has the context and knows the nuances of the different markets in which you're going, etc. And that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. It's like your day-to-day things. Like you're not going to use AI to make your bed, right? But you can use AI to create your grocery list and come up with ideas for recipes and make your trip to the grocery store, instead of 2 hours that my mom and I love to do, it becomes 30 minutes, like my wife and my father like to do, right? So
right.
It helps you. It helps you navigate those things. So you got to pick and choose where you're going to use it.
That's interesting. Yeah, it makes sense.
I
mean, I think that's borderline advice. So we'll jump right to that. I mean, I think what's something that you can offer for someone who's trying to, be in a position similar to you, whether it's in the consumer insights space or as the leader of a sales team, just knowing where these tools are going and what you've seen, like what is the biggest piece of advice you could offer somebody?
Yeah. So I would say in the consumer insight space, it's I'm a big believer that you gotta know before. You gotta know the steps. You gotta know the process. What are the pain points, challenges, in order for us to see, okay, what can we help out? What can we automate? What can we create that is going to help me with some manual task or some task that I shouldn't be doing. So, for example, in the consumer insight space, if you're trying to get into and you want to know, I'm biased because I really like technology. So it's like, what are the leaders in the technology space that are solving for the biggest problems in the industry? Learn that. Make sure that you understand what those problems and challenges are, and then, is there anybody solving it today, right? If not, can you go and solve it? If yes, like try to join that group of people or connect with those folks.
Yeah.
The other thing, George, and going back, I did a presentation on AI and AI in the consumer insight space, and I had a video. I don't know if you guys remember when the internet came out. There was I think it was an ABC or CBS or something like that, where people were like, "What is the internet? What is this ads thing? What does it mean?" Like, right? So I feel like a lot of people are in the same boat today with like, okay, what is Gen AI? What does it mean? Like, what is it? Right? So we want to be proactive and due diligent and like go and figure out that for the industry that you're trying to get into, right? If we're talking about the AI, because we have to understand. And then on the second part, which is on the sales leadership, it's understand that as a sales leader, you don't have the answers for everything. You simply don't. What you want to try to do is enable your teams to be as productive and as efficient as possible. So what are the tools out there that are going to help you help your team and eventually create a winning team and organization, right? However you define winning, right? Making more deals, increase revenue, expand your customer base, have everybody happy, get more people to support, whatever you define winning, right? But you want to make sure that you are using the technology needed to enhance your team's performance and make them better, right? And you don't have to use all the technologies that are under the sun. You just got to find the 2 or 3 that are going to help your team, and then they can integrate to your CRM, which I think is one of the key pieces of the puzzle. If you don't have a tool that doesn't get into your CRM, then you're just using 2 systems to make decisions.
Yeah.
Just the thought of CRM just turns me right off.
Combine that with
Then every time I said CRM,
team.
you were like cringing. You're like, no.
No.
That's too much.
Anything that will help populate CRM, though, like Gong or whatever it happens to be, that's a godsend.
No, and then we go into forecasting, and that's another whole conversation. I think we need an entire podcast for that.
We'll line you up for another one.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, it's really interesting, really fascinating. It's really it's when we get these insights from real people who are really using the tools, it's fascinating to see how much of an impact they are actually making. And nobody's came on yet and said, and told us horror stories or anything like that. It's all been very, very, everybody's work is made faster, made easier, made powerful. Insights are driven, and we're only at the start as well. So it's really, it's going to be exciting to see what happens over the next, 2, 3, 4, 5 years with all of this technology.
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely, the ROI is there, but I think like everything, technology or everything, it's like garbage in, garbage out. So you have to be very mindful, and something that can't remember who told me this, but I was at a conference having a conversation, and our prospect said that they had tried it, but some of the data that they were bringing into was just bad data. So it was not a curated data. So the decisions that were made, and she was an expert in it. She was like, this doesn't make sense. And it's because the data input was wrong, right? So for example, you can have automation platforms to send emails and whatnot, but you have no idea how many emails I get that are like, it says like, dear client, I noticed that you visited our
client
website.
First name.
I have never heard of Bloomy.ai. Like I've never heard of you guys. Like, no,
that's
I've not been on your system at all.
That's like Georgia and I, we are a chatbot on the AI Impacts website. Is going through some similar issues at the minute.
Some very questionable.
Hi, user's first name is Dean.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. It literally says, hi, user's first name is Dean, instead of just putting Dean in that spot. And it works every time we test it. Yeah. But in the live environment, for some reason, it takes on a life of its own. Yeah, that's fast. I mean, I think to your point about the usefulness of these tools, and I think they're really at more of kind of like a workflow optimization, it seems, is like where they really do the best. That also seems like the thing that's the most difficult to sort of present and wow somebody. Like the make a recipe on ChatGPT is really cool, but the actual time, like how many times does someone actually use that in their life where they need it, right? Versus some of these other pieces that are behind the scenes, which are helping a salesperson like Dean not have to put a bunch of stuff in a CRM all the time. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Just, I think that there's a huge impact there that's hard to actually see, especially at the consumer side.
And I think as well, especially if they don't understand the workflow itself. I think that's the step is like, okay, do you understand the workflow first of all? And then, okay, how can we then use AI to improve the workflow?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and in this industry, a lot of that workflow is done by external agencies and external players, right? Not the companies themselves. So they don't even know the workflow sometimes. They just know that they put a brief out there, a well-thought brief, because these are professionals, they know what they're doing, but they put a brief out there. And then the agencies or whoever the consultants or whoever they're working with, they go and do all the work, right? So I think what technology is also helping and enabling is bringing the information and bringing that flow closer to these brands and these insights managers and consumer insights managers. So these guys now have to be a little bit more hands-on and understand a little bit more of that workflow. And as we do that, they're going to start looking at like, what are the gaps? and they're going to start thinking and collaborating with the technology companies. Hey, can you fill this gap? Right. Mm-hmm. And that is how then you get to evolve and you get to improve these technologies as well. So that is also something that at least I think it's a lot of fun. It's this kind of partnership that you create by bringing things closer to them. It's like, hey, like you're talking about benchmarks. Do you know how the benchmarks work? And do you have the right benchmarks to do your concept development? And they're like, well, I don't know, it's the industry standard. Okay, but do you know how it's done, right? Here I can get you very close to how it's done, and we can look and see if this is something that is working for you or not, right? So I think that is another value proposition of these technologies that are bringing the data and the information closer to the people that are making it, reducing the friction of those decision-making processes.
Yeah, massive impact. That seems like a good place to wrap. Cristian, where can people find you online if they want to keep following these fantastic insights, everything you have to say?
I appreciate that. So LinkedIn, I think is the main page. I've thought of the idea of starting like a blog or starting like some kind of thought leadership, but I think for now let's keep it in LinkedIn. Cristian Enriquez,
well, now you've said
Cherry, you're gonna see. Yeah. I know. Now I'm saying I gotta commit. It's just a thought.
No, that's out there. Yeah,
just a thought.
There you go.
But yeah, on LinkedIn, I'm happy to connect. Feel free to send a connection request. Happy to have conversations and continue talking through the impact.
Awesome. Dean, any final words?
Thanks very much. No, just thanks. That was really insightful. Thank you.
Very much so. And impactful.
Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate for having me, and a pleasure. And keep up the good work. You guys are doing great.
Yeah.
Cheers, George. Do you want to lead us out?
I'll read us out. So thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in to the AI Impacts podcast. You can, of course, find us on YouTube, where you're probably watching this now, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to send us a voice memo, play with our chatbot, which sometimes works, leave us a message, etc., check us out at aiimpacts.show. And then otherwise, we are on LinkedIn, and I think we're on the other social networks. I'm not really sure yet, but LinkedIn is the place for now. Cristian, thank you so much for joining us. Dean, see you next time.
Thank you.
Next time.